Listen again!
So the first one may seem obvious for some, but I thought it was genius when I first started playing. On your multi-tool you can install all types of upgrades, but once you install the terrain manipulator, you can also dig into the ground. Use that to shelter from a storm, among other things. If you get chased by sentinels, just dig into the ground, go left, go right, and they've lost you guaranteed. If you get lost in a cave system, just use it to dig yourself out of there. Sometimes it's the simple things that can make a major difference. Number 2. That scanner you have? Yes, that one. You can upgrade that too. From the videos I've seen, this is a popular one to mention, but nobody mentions where you can actually get this. If you land at a space station, you can get it from a multi-tool technology merchant, instead of a exosuit merchant. What I thought is, well, a visor is part of a suit, right? Well, it seems to be part of your multi-tool instead. That would have saved me so much time had I knew that beforehand. Anyway, just go up to this merchant and search for a scanner module, preferably an S-class module, which will hopefully be a holographic analysis unit. If you're lucky, it will significantly increase your analysis rewards for fauna and flora. As you can see here, it increased mine for 6,511%, which if you then scan plants or animals, will grant you with a lot of units, instead of the tiny amount which you get by default. If you do this early on, you are set for later. Did you also know that you can zoom in while scanning flora and fauna? You don't have to move closer per se, just zoom in. On Xbox, it's pushing in the right stick, which is RS or R3. Number 3. Now your exosuit has little space when starting out, so we're gonna need to upgrade that as soon as possible. When you find one of those drop pods, which are easily found by just buying an exosuit upgrade chart from the Cartographer in the space station, you'll need to repair it, and after that's done, you'll get a slot as reward. This slot is set as inventory space by default, but you can also select the top part to unlock one slot for your exosuit upgrades. So you don't have to just upgrade your inventory if you actually want an additional spot for upgrades. Oh, and those spots aren't the only way of upgrading your inventory/technology slots. Next to the exosuit research merchant, you will find this thing, which will only work once per system and allows you to buy one slot for X amount of units. This amount will get higher every time you purchase one slot, but is so worth it. So every time you visit the space station, this should be on your to-do list for sure. Number 4. Also, if you're visiting a lot of systems and thus space stations, always look for travelers. These are special types of aliens which will grant you the location of a traveler's grave, which will contain a glyph, of which you will need 16 when making use of a glyph portal. Now you will learn all 16 of these when you complete the story, so it's not completely necessary, but if you have no intention of completing the story or just want access to the portal glyphs right away, it may be handy to just look out for them. These portals are different from the ones on the space station because here you can input coordinates for anywhere in the whole game, instead of going to a spot you've already been. Something which is awesome to use to find cool items or certain planets later on in the game. Also, if you ever come across a glyph portal, make sure to mark it with a base, so you can quickly travel there later on. There is ways to find those as well, on which I have a dedicated video, but it's easier to just mark them right away. Number 5. Now this one may seem obvious again to some, but I always thought that when you're moving items from your ship to your exosuit inventory, you have to grab the item and then go to the other tab to set it down there to move it basically. But you can just press the quick transfer button. On Xbox it's Y and then Y again to move it quickly without switching tabs. This makes life so much easier and once again would have saved me so much time. Also, there's something called a teleport receiver, which is an upgrade for your ship and can be bought at the anomaly at Iteration Hyperion. This will give you access to the ship's cargo at a longer distance, which is now 150U instead of 50U. Number 6. Now, just like the glyph portal, you can set bases at points of interest to instantly warp there from a base teleport module or from one in the space station. This will save you a lot of fuel if it's a planet you need to come back to a lot for resources, or mining echolocators to find a sentinel ship, for example, or just a location where there's cool animals or plants. You can use it for basically anything. Just don't forget to set a portal on that base too, otherwise you will need to fly to a space station first to get back. Additionally, you can also set beacons, which won't give you the ability to spawn there right away, but will always be marked in your system to save points of interest. Number 7. Now, when you're mining resources with a terrain manipulator, you can also increase or decrease the setting. The bigger this setting is, the faster you will mine. But that comes at a cost because the yield is much lower. The smaller the setting, the slower you'll mine said resource, but the yield will be much higher. So it actually makes a lot of sense to just make it a smaller setting when mining a resource. On Xbox, it's set with the RB and LB buttons. Number 8. If you visited a space station or anomaly already, you probably know how annoying it is that you can only walk or run there. The super jump, where you sort of lean into it while simultaneously using the jetpack, activated with the melee button and the jetpack button at the same time, doesn't work here. But there is a workaround for this. An upgrade called rocket boots, acquired from an exosuit technology merchant in these space stations. This will allow you to still use it in space stations and in the anomaly. It's activated by quickly pressing the jump button, and if you hold it after, you will just fly like the super jump. If it's worth getting, that's up to you, but it's handy for quickly moving around there for sure. Number 9. Now, when you're just starting out, ship fuel and especially launch fuel can be a pain in the ass. You just want to fly out whenever you want and not be bothered by fuel when you launch off. Even in the later stage of the game, it can still be an annoyance. Now, there is obviously upgrades to buy for your ship, which will increase the efficiency, making every time you launch off less painful. But there is even upgrades that will allow you to automatically recharge this fuel when the ship is idle. Now, that's a great upgrade. But if you're not able to buy these upgrades yet at Iteration Hyperion, why not start with mining uranium first? That gets rid of that annoying starship launch fuel problem, as you can just feed it uranium. Much easier. When you're able to, you can also grab a sentinel ship, which will allow you to recharge it using radiant shards, which is easy to get when you have the advanced mining laser upgrade installed on your multi-tool. This is also stacked per 10, so you don't have to have huge amounts in your inventory. Number 10. You will get attacked by pirates and sentinels in space too. These battles can be quite annoying, but there is a trick. There's basically an auto-aim mode on ships. On Xbox, it's LT, which will follow ships around, so you only have to shoot. This works better if there's only 1 or 2 ships though, as otherwise it will sort of not know where to look. But if space battles are overwhelming, that's the best tip I can give you. And if you're losing, just speed off, call in the anomaly, or go into a space station to avoid the battle altogether. They will just despawn after you get back out. Sometimes it's just not worth the effort. Number 11. If you're on the hunt for certain buildings or places on a planet, going to the space station and giving the Cartographer a visit is the easiest way. But if you buy a planetary chart, there are still multiple options as to what you will get pointed out to. For an inhabited outpost chart, it can be a shelter at 8%, a trade outpost at 5%, a minor settlement at 15%, a transmission tower at 8%, an observatory at 8%, and even a colossal archive at 5%. As you can see, there are still a lot of options with relatively low percentage of actually getting pointed towards them. So instead of activating 20 planetary charts and visiting those every time, just keep on activating them. Eventually, it will say you already have one active, but just keep on doing this. because when it says that, it means that it just found another one of that type and it won't use up another chart doing it, but still activate the chance. So if you keep trying, it will eventually give you a different spot, and if that's not the one you want either, you can keep trying again, because the charts won't activate if you haven't changed location or if they're the same type. In this way, it's pretty easy to find the place you want. Number 12. If you're playing with friends and you keep warping to different systems, eventually you won't find them anymore on the galaxy map, since it's huge. Now, if you follow the main questline with Artemis, you will eventually be given access to the anomaly. This is a space station of sorts, which you can spawn anywhere in space. If you go in there and just go back out again, it will ask you where you want to spawn to, your system or that of your friend. Now that's easy. Number 13. When you ever come across a crashed freighter, you can use your scanner for points of interest, especially these storage containers. They will contain some materials, but those aren't really the contents. I always thought that that was it, but if you empty them and then search again, only then will you be able to get the reward hidden inside. The amount of times I've just grabbed the materials and left is crazy. Eventually, in the story, there will be a mission where it will basically require you to do this, but won't explain how to. That's the reason I found out, but it's better to know right away. Number 14. You can spawn your ship anywhere using the quick menu if it has enough fuel stored. So you won't have to walk back to your ship every time, which will make exploring much more fun since you won't have to walk back for 15 minutes. If you ever come across a ship that is ripe for the taking, don't worry about leaving your current ship. It may look like you can only use one, but it will just swap out the current one. Via that same quick menu, you can then select the ship you want to use as your main ship. And if you don't like the ship you picked up earlier, you can always sell it off at a space station, which can be a great source of income at the beginning as well. Especially with these Sentinel ships, for which I have a separate guide. Number 15. Along with upgrading your inventory size with the earlier trick, you also want to invest in having a storage container at your base. You can then move all the excess items, or just things that you won't need to carry with you all of the time. This is great for when you need them later or just want to make room in your inventory. Because there's nothing more infuriating than having no inventory space when there's an item you want to carry along. These storage containers work across multiple bases too, so if you just build the same storage container which carries the same number, you can always access it anywhere. And the last tip I can give is that if you're struggling with inventory space, is to have multiple ships available to spawn using that quick menu I just told you about. And use the ships as flying storage containers. Since you can just spawn them anywhere, you can use different ships for different types of resources utilizing the ship inventory. And always have access to everything.